am involved in. And one rule is just kind of be present. And I suggest that because I know that you are all very busy people and you lead lives outside of this room this evening. But you're here with your physical presence this evening. And so I'd like you to be, to the extent possible, be totally present in this meeting tonight as possible. Secondly, there are a variety of opinions that may be offered this evening and comments. What I'd like to suggest is that you listen respectfully and respond resourcefully. And that is, listen to what people have to say and then try to build off those comments or make comments of your own. Now, I know that different people have different styles of communicating and sharing. Some people are comfortable, if this was a room of 500 people, some people would be very comfortable just getting up and sharing their opinion. Other people may not be comfortable sharing their opinion in a group of 5. So what we are going to be doing this evening is kind of having this large session. We will be splitting up into some smaller discussion groups later on. So feel free, whether in this larger group or in your smaller group, to share your comments. However, I know also that some people are just not all that comfortable sharing whatever the size of the group. And so what I will have for each small group is some paper that you would feel comfortable. If you are not comfortable sharing verbally, if you'd like to share your written comments on those questions that we will be talking about, feel free to do that. Also, I have included on a slide the email addresses of the TBC board members as well as my own. If you are not comfortable sharing in writing, feel free to share in form of an email. I'd be happy to take those comments and include those in a report that I will be doing for the board. So lots of different ways that you can share your expertise and your knowledge this evening. And then I have what I like to refer to as the Elmo rule in meetings that I facilitate. And the Elmo rule simply stands for enough, let's move on. Now I know you've never had that experience in a meeting. And I suppose if we were using Robert's Rules of Order tonight, this would be that Robert's rule that says, call the question. But this is not, this is a conversation mode tonight. So if we get too deep in the woods, in the weeds, on any particular topic and you would like to move on, you have the authority tonight to call the Elmo rule, okay? And then finally, just, in terms of your cell phones or any other mobile device, you kind of know the drill on your phones. If you could mute them or turn them off, or if you get a call, if you could just take it outside. So, that's kind of the ground rules for this evening. What we're going to start with is that first objective this evening, and that is learning more about what is happening in the Tatanka Bluffs corridor, the TBC. And the TBC board has put together a short PowerPoint presentation, and I think several members of the board will be sharing that update with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Lauren, and I can move the slides for you, Lauren.
All right, I'll give you the signal. I'll open just with a general comment. It all kind of started back in the middle, 2005, 2006. Group of us went to Blandon, and it was about the time that I'm a reader, and I like looking at numbers. And in setting my insurance agency, and watching what had happened over the previous decade. The average age of my clients was getting older by 5 years, every 5 years. Young people were leaving. I statistically could see that, and we were aging. And this was about the time that that Jack Schultz came in, and it became very evident to me if this continued, Redwood County would not need 2 State Farm agents when my brother and I choose to retire. Probably get by with 1, and that something was happening. Jack Schultz came in, for those of you who may have been there, and talked about us losing our critical mass. And the critical mass is when you don't have enough younger females having children to keep your schools filled with students. Because students grow up and graduate and then turn into workers for the workforce. And he said, if you don't get busy and save your critical mass and keep your numbers up, Redwood and Renville County are going to be in trouble, within the decade. And it was just like a red flag that went up. And then I read, I want to click on the first screen, an article by Lee Egerstrom, and he writes for Minnesota 2020. If we email this to you, you can click on the link to the article. We can't click on it here. But in essence, a couple of USDA demographers, and I like reading demographic trends, looked at the 2,200 rural counties across America. And when they specifically looked at Minnesota, they defined 34 of the 87 counties in Minnesota to lack cultural and institutional amenities deemed sufficient to support growth. What that means is young people don't want to live here. There's nothing to do. It's no fun. There's a better job market down in the cities. Let's get out of Dodge and go to the land of opportunity. So,
is this where you had said it used to be rural, but now we're frontier?
Yeah.
Which is a step back.
And so, well, it's really flipped. When you think about the Westward Ho and all that, Manifest Destiny 150 years ago, the frontier was the land of opportunity. You get free land, and the immigrants were just heading west. Now the definition of a frontier county is a place where people don't want to live. And what the article went on to describe is we're known for our reverse migration or out migration of residents and aging population of those left behind. When my family moved here when I was 5, which is 55 years ago, the 2-county population was in that 45,000 range. And we're lucky now, help me out here, I think it's close to 30. I think we're still above 30 between the 2 counties, but we're sliding. We're having more deaths than we are births, and more people moving out. The largest loss factor in my insurance agency, it's not competition, it's not Geico, it's not those other companies. It's the funeral home. I can't convince people to stop dying. And of course, the kids live out of the area, and the cars get canceled, the house gets sold, and we lose a client, and there's no, there aren't droves of people moving in to replace them on that. And so when we flip to the next slide, and again, I was reading this article back in 2007, and he said smokestack chasing is not a viable course of action because the half-century of steady population decline doesn't leave us any workers. And so if we landed the jackpot, in essence, if Daktronics said, we're going to double the workforce, and if they put an ad in local papers and local radios, guess what? What's our unemployment here? Everyone who's willing to show up to work already got a job. They're struggling to find workers. There aren't people willing to move here. It's no fun. Nothing to do out there, And so the challenge comes with these companies. Julie can't recruit them because they look at the numbers and you don't have workers to go to work. Doesn't matter how much of a grant we would give them. If you don't have an available workforce, they're not coming. Basically, what he indicates is we got to work with ground-up development. You got to work with the Don Schwartzes and Johnny Crafts, you know, the entrepreneur owners, Market Activate. You've got Corey here in Lucan, and help existing businesses expand and grow a few employees at a time. And here's the line that hit me. It's in about the last, in a summary paragraph. Unless low amenity counties such as Redwood and Renville can find a means to develop a recreation industry. Let's repeat that one again. Unless low amenity counties can find a means to develop a recreation industry, they must deal with either industrial agriculture or continued population loss. So he lists 3 choices. Get your tails busy creating a recreation industry. Go recruit a processing plant and deal with an immigrant population and the problems that come with that. Or just give up, decide which churches are going to close, which clubs will fold, which schools will consolidate, and get used to being older and smaller with a lower population. And so out of that kind of got my juices going about 8 years ago with Julie and some other founders that put it together. And we started looking at what the community was. And we started looking at this 2-county area. How can we make Redwood and Renville County utilize the natural resources of the Minnesota River Valley and the other resources that exist to make this a long-term recreation, competitive recreation destination that people would be willing to not only come out for the weekend, but come for a week or more and bring more dollars from the outside into our economic circle. And so out of that basically came our mission to create sustainability and protect the natural resources in the Minnesota River Valley, and to work to enhance the quality of life for the current residents, future generations, and by providing these recreational opportunities in all seasons. And so we kind of looked at that Minnesota River with bookend state parks, Upper Sioux, Fort Ridgely, basically just at the edges of the 2 counties, Ramsey Park, and a whole bunch of wonderful Renville County parks in between, and a couple bookend casinos to match up with for that evening recreation. That's where we began to lay the groundwork. How can we put the appropriate infrastructure in place? Let's hit the next slide. And so, in essence, when you look at the 2 counties, Renville County has 10 communities, and Redwood County has 16 when you include the Lower Sioux community within that. And we try and encourage those communities within to develop a vision for why people might come to their community. What can they attract there? And who would have thought that 20 years ago we'd have this type of facility in Lucan? Who would have thought that there's this wine and pizza place out in the woods 2 miles off on a gravel road in Bellevue? And trust me, if you want to go there on a Saturday night, we went at 6 and couldn't find a spot in the parking lot. You got to plan a little bit better than we do. Get there early if you want to get into the first wave. But how can we spread this economic wealth across the greater spatial community back into those 26 neighborhoods? That this isn't all about putting things at the center. It's how do we enhance the activities down in Walnut Grove and with the tourism that we have. It's wonderful that the proposed ATV park is to the northwest, and will have a wonderful impact in that Bellevue Sacred Heart area and so forth. What can we do in the Morgan area? And I mean, Morgan, I'm the only one here. I actually live in Morgan, although I work in Redwood. We have challenges. And I'll say this Troy, you can't go with this, or you could be in trouble. You know, you know what the largest bus route in Cedar Mountain School District is?
Redwood?
Yeah, Redwood Falls, the bus coming out of Redwood. And so we're looking at, you know, paying for replacing an old building and so forth. And here's the question I need to ask over more. What's plan B? You know, plan A is let's use students from Redwood to be financially stable. So what's plan B when Redwood runs out of students? Do we have a few from Wabasso? No, that's just no. And so, I mean, we gotta bring more people into the circle. We gotta bring more money into the circle. And we can't do it from the top down. It's gotta come from the 26 communities up into the economic circle with their individual visions for their community. With that, I think that's my last slide. One more. We basically, at that time, and we haven't touched this since 2008, we developed 5 focus areas. Outdoor recreation, most of you may not know this. We have brought in over $10 million in grants that have bought in public lands in the Minnesota River Valley and a lot along the Cottonwood River that are wildlife management areas, that type of a thing. Been working with renewable tourism, community celebrations, educational opportunities. We now have the Minnesota West Campus in Redwood Falls, working with the Minnesota Valley History Learning Center out in Morton, and again with general economic development. So with that, I think Ted is going to share a few more of those success stories of what Tatanka Bluffs has been working on.
I must have started hearing about Tatanka Bluffs right about the time it was formed. And it was like a lot of things, you hear about it, you have a vague sense of what it is, but you don't quite know. And then about 3 years ago, I started being asked if I would be interested in being on the board. And after the election 2 years ago, I said, sure, I'll be on the board. Got a little time now. And I think it was at about the 3rd meeting that I attended, I was still a little bit confused as to what was this thing that I was on the board of. It wasn't really a chamber of commerce. It really wasn't a tourism. It wasn't an EDA board. So finally I just said, what's our mission? I mean, we could go back to the slide. The problem with mission statements is oftentimes they sound really nice, but you have to have somebody tell you what they mean. And Lauren wasn't there yet, and I think I got 3 different versions of what the mission was. Lauren walked in, and I said, Lauren, what's the mission? And he said it in about 4 or 5 words: to be a catalyst to make this a destination tourism area and support economic development. And that's really what we're about, is we're a catalyst. We're not an operational agency. We don't have a staff. We have lone staff, Julie's staff, Ann's staff, I'm staff, everybody's staff, but we don't have an office with a staff. But we are a catalyst. And if you go back to 2007, and I don't know, 6, 8, 10 people, how many people actually started Tatanka Bluffs, but what they did was they got together and they started talking and taking action. And a lot has happened. I'm going to read you a list that I put together, and I'm sure this is not the entire list of things that grew out of those original conversations, bringing people together, and then the subsequent conversations. The Green Corridor Committee, Lauren made reference to that, one of the largest recipients of the state money that comes from the
Legacy dollars.
The legacy dollars, the money we all pay a little bit extra in sales tax. One of the largest recipients of the state is the Redwood Area Community Foundation, because the Green Corridor Committee, which was a brainchild of some of the people on the Tatanka Bluffs board, formed that, and they have bought land down by Lamberton in the River Valley for hunting, recreation, that sort of thing. Out of that, one of the projects is an aquatic management area on the north side of the river. It's Whispering Ridge Aquatic Management Area. And within the Whispering Ridge Aquatic Management Area is a new canoe landing. We're trying to increase the amount of canoeing on the river as a recreation to make something more for people in this area to do. Somebody might even want to start a canoe outfitting business as a result of the increased canoeing activities on the river. But as a result of that, a lot of the labor was done by an organization called the Conservation Corps of Minnesota. These are young people who are employed. There's summer job opportunities. They come from all over the state. In fact, they come from other states. And they work on projects such as building a landing. If you see that, I don't know if they particularly worked on that rock formation. That is down at Mack Lake State Park down towards New Ulm. But up here in the Beaver Falls State Park, just north of Redwood Falls, there's a very similar rock formation. The Conservation Corps of Minnesota, which I think got its start in the area working on the Whispering Ridge Wildlife, or the Aquatic Management Area canoe landing, has been into Renville County parks over the last 3 or 4 summers. And in fact, we're working on a project where we'll bring them back over the next couple summers for something later down on my list. The shared landscape proposal, again, this didn't come out of Tatanka Bluffs, but it came out of people from Tatanka Bluffs. That is a proposal to try and bring all the public lands in our 2 counties together to be managed for recreation and more uses. And Lauren's involved with that, I was involved with that. A lot of people here were involved in some of those meetings. But the DNR, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, is moving legislation through the legislature to start the planning process for a shared landscape so that rather than just be for hunting or just be for trail or just be for this, that the public lands get more use. That hopefully will become a model for other shared landscape areas across the state. There's a Green Corridor Horse Committee. The Green Corridor Horse Committee has both promoted the development of horse trails in the river valley, and they promote rides by saddle clubs. Saddle clubs both located in the valley and outside of the valley, bringing more people in. The Minnesota Valley History Learning Center. It's probably my favorite one because I'm on the board of that in Morton, Minnesota. We have been in business for 5, 6 years probably, bringing students to Morton from around the area to learn about the Dakota War. I don't know how many of you know what gneiss rock is. It's not N-I-C-E, G-N-E-I-S-S. It's granite. Some of the oldest exposed rock on the entire planet, over 3 million years old, is in Morton. When you go into Morton on where 19 divides from 71, there's a nice large piece of rock kind of between the highway and the school. That's a scientific and natural area, owned by the state of Minnesota, managed by the DNR, to allow people to see this rock, and hopefully we're using that as part of our learning at the Minnesota Valley Learning Center, Minnesota Valley History Learning Center. This summer, we will have 2 different teacher training programs, teachers from all over southwestern Minnesota who will be brought in to learn more about the gneiss rock and the Dakota War, and also Native language, culture, and history, so that they can go back to their classrooms and do a better job of teaching. The Minnesota Valley History Learning Center, which grew directly out of the Tatanka Bluffs conversations, played a very integral role working with the city of Morton, the Lower Sioux Indian community, and Redwood County, Renville County, to start the planning on something we call the Charles Eastman Trail Complex. We received a $200,000 grant. We will receive it once the legislature is done acting on it here in the next few weeks, to start the first phases of a trail complex which ultimately will connect the Birch Coulee battlefield north of Morton, down to the city of Morton, to the scientific and natural area, down to the Lower Sioux Interpretive Center, which was the site of some of the major incidents in the 1862 war. And we've had cooperation with the native community. I think one of the real gratifying results of this whole process is that we have a member of the Tribal Council from Lower Sioux as a member of our board of the Minnesota Valley History Learning Center. And because part of the trails of the Charles Eastman Trail Complex will cross the reservation, they're cooperating with us on that. In fact, I was out just yesterday and talked to Danny Prescott, the tribal chairman, about some of that. They're very eager to be involved. The casino is one of the largest, it's probably the largest employer in the county. And unfortunately, so many people come on a bus, they gamble for a while, they get on the bus and they leave. We want to have other things for them to do so that they'll stay. The Minnesota River State Trail is going to come through this area, and we're hoping that the Charles Eastman Trail will be part of that. Bruce is on the Friends of the Casey Jones State Trail. One of the things that grew out of the Tatanka Bluffs was a grant for a 4-county trail planning project. And we've got 2 state trails coming together here in our county. And so that 4-county trails planning project, which was completed by the Center for Changing Landscape at the University of Minnesota, gives us some of the base documents. Just a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we had the first meeting of the newly created, thanks to the Redwood County Board, the Redwood County Parks and Trails Commission. That's an idea that came out of people from Tatanka Bluff. So we've got a lot of things that happened. The Minnesota River Blueway, which was a national program, and we're transitioning that because that's changed, that grew, in many ways, our participation in that out of the shared landscape idea. So the whole idea here, the whole important message here is that when we work together, we can accomplish things. There's 26 communities, as Lauren talked about. There isn't any one of those 26 communities that in and of itself can become a tourism destination. But imagine if in each one of those 26 communities, we could, over the next 2 or 3 years, start a canoe outfitter, a bed and breakfast or 2, another gift shop, maybe an artist with an art gallery, or a potter with a pottery gallery. If we could add 26 new business, recreation, tourism entities to our overall picture, to go with the casino, the huge tourist attraction, the Laura Ingalls Wilder pageant and museum at Walnut Grove, and the river itself, we can make this the kind of a place, our 2 counties, where people say, where do we want to go on vacation this year? Gee, let's go down there, because there's all these nice, quaint little communities, and there's gift shops, there's antique shops, there's nice beds and breakfasts, there's a canoe outfitter on the river, there's maybe a dude ranch if we want to rent horses. Collectively, if we all work together, we can make this a tourism destination. We want to help you in your communities, but we need you to help us by being partners, and that's really what we want out of you tonight, is to start that partnership.
John, are you up?
I don't know if I'm up. You don't let me know. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to talk about, because I think it has to do with what we have up here on the on the board. Can you back it up a picture? I want to go back to those rocks you talked about.
Yeah, I didn't move through the slides like I was supposed to. I'm very non-compliant.
One more. There must be another one farther back. You have those rocks in a circle.
Yeah, it's
That's the park with
it
the
is
4.
back about
One
2
more.
slides. One more. I think.
One more.
There we go.
Okay. That's it.
That is the Conservation Corps
The
crew.
Conservation Corps crew in the upper left and the lower right. That's 2 different crews. The one at the bottom is in blue shirts. The City of Olivia Chamber of Commerce delivered a shirt, Corn Capital, as you you might guess. Corn Capital T-shirts to all the kids. And their leader is in that tan shirt there in the center on the back. Those guys and gals did an awful lot of hand work. They weren't allowed to use any machinery. They weren't allowed to have anything motorized. It all had to be hand shovels and wheelbarrows. And those rocks were moved by them with help of a county tractor. The county had to run it, of course. In the upper right, you see that circle. This is the Beaver Creek Valley that you're looking down at. And the new shelter house is down there, way down in the valley below us. And this circle is a ring around a big fire pit. And the Friends of the Renville County Parks had a party there. We were well behaved.
Is that beer bottle there?
I should have brought a picture for you that had those people there. We pounded drums and just had a blast. You could hear the drums beating all the way down, probably to Wabasso from there. I'm telling you, we really sang songs, and we had a blast sitting there around the campfire. And the kids did that. I complained to them because I says, us older people are having a hard time walking up the hill to this thing. I says, why can't we have a little parking area up there and drive up there? We're never going to get it. We got to walk up there. So I might bring a wheelbarrow and haul wood up there sometime. May have to stop 5 times on the way up. It is higher than it looks there. It looks like we're, on the same plane with that shelter house back there. But we're quite a bit higher. So we had fun, and the lower left, all those rocks were put in place by these same types of kids. The kids from all over the world, basically. They got to know each other real well. They stayed in campground at Redwood Falls. I think 3 years they stayed there. And so they had shower facilities and everything like that. But nice bunch of kids. They learned to love each other, take care of each other, and work with each other. Every race and nationality could possibly be thrown in there. They weren't all Norwegians.
And some of them, I should say, were deaf also.
Yeah.
There were even some deaf ones. Okay, so handicapped people too. So the kids really got to know a little diversity here. In the lower left picture, that's the Skalbeck family home that they grew up in, and it was moved into the Skalbeck Park, Skalbecken it's called. I think they're Swedish. We won't hold that against them. And these flower beds are put in here by those kids. And so they've made a lot of improvements in our parks. And I think the next couple slides are about that sort of thing. On the left and right, both of those are the same lake. That's Anderson Lake Park. We're looking north across to see a farm place over there along the road, the River Valley Road. And of course on the right you see a beaver project underway. That tree that may not last much longer. It may be gone by now. And this lake occasionally has some tremendous fishing in it. What we have to have is a high flood from Minnesota, and it dumps fish in there. And then those fish sort themselves out. For 1 year they were catching 2-pound crappies out of that thing like you couldn't believe. I never got there. I never hear about those things in time. So I missed out. I want a 2-pound crappie on my wall. When I go to the nursing home, I can sit and look at that sucker. Next one is horseback riding through Hawk Creek. That's really popular in some of our parks. Skalbecken Park is the horse park. And Beaver Falls has a part of the park that's literally taken over by horses because those people really flock in there. And they're pretty well-behaved people. They take care of themselves. They take care of the property. And so I don't think there's any problems from the horse people. We are, hopefully, with Dick working on it, we're going to have a hot air balloons episode in the Valley of the Minnesota. And I think he's going to come through with that sooner or later. I'm going to help him out.
Thank you.
We're going to find the right people and get a hot air balloon trip in there. And wouldn't that be something? Look at the Valley of the Minnesota and you see these colorful balloons drifting south down the river valley. It'd be just beautiful. Next. Well, no, the sign in the middle. I heard a rumor that Walnut Grove is inviting a whole bunch of people back this year. And a lot of them have committed, 8, I think.
More than that even.
It's bigger than that now. I told my son, he lives out in Boulder, Colorado, and he grew up with Laura Ingalls Wilder on TV. And I told him that you were planning on coming in June, man. Why don't you think about, was it July something here?
Yeah.
And I says, you might want to come out and visit Walnut Grove. And he says, why? And I said, well, you know that Laura Ingalls Wilder lived there. Yeah. I says, 8 at least of the people who were in the movie, the video that we saw every week and we never missed, they're coming out here. And so he changed his tune and he's coming now in July instead of June. He is going to be there for that. In the lower left picture, you see the typical thing that is happening in the summertime. People are taking canoes down the river. And you suggested that we should probably have somebody being an outfitter there. And I think one of our Olivia residents is planning on doing some guiding on the river. The log cabin at the right is from Mack Lake. I understand it's the Mack family.
That's
right.
That's the family home.
This is their family home. They lived in that thing, and it was moved here from their farm place across the road and up. And it's on a mound, but that mound isn't high enough to stop the river water from reaching it. So the bottom logs are rotting. We have a big project to do there. A lot of help to keep that thing running. It is a kind of a really homey looking place. It's a beautiful spot. Obviously, hunting is popular in the valley. The turkey population in the Minnesota Valley is unbelievable. And the doves are now a hunting bird. A lot of people thought, oh, why are we hunting the mourning dove? They're so sweet and so beautiful in the morning. They sound so nice. That is the most hunted game bird in North America. There are more of them killed than any other birds. And they reproduce well. They have at least 3 broods a year, so you don't have to worry about extinction. And they are hard to hit. That guy, he had to have help. Normally, you get 1 bird out of about a box of shells. They twist and dodge, and they're really tricky. I've killed 2 in 4 years, so you can tell how bad I am. The picture of the guy with the fish. The Minnesota River has been cleaned up so much that the sturgeons are coming back. This is a shovel-nosed sturgeon, pretty good sized one actually. He isn't holding it out in front of the camera too bad. Notice the 4 whiskers up there on his nose. That's underneath the nose. That's how they smell food and taste food, and they can follow it around in the river. They have a tail like a shark on, and they have real sharp, bony scales along their sides. If you grab one wrong, you'll stick yourself in the hand. They're a fascinating fish. And of course, motorcycles. These probably
And I wouldn't
represent.
touch it.
This is probably Julie's motorcycle at the front
No,
here.
that's all your have those ones.
Okay, a lot of motorcycle riders use the valley for scenery, and we have a lot of them who do honor to the veterans or the people who were killed in the wars. And I was around with one of them during this wintertime, and we were putting up wreaths before Christmas on some of the graves. We did one right here in Redwood Falls, and we all over the area. A nasty, cold, windy day. The 2 pictures, I'm not sure what the one on the right is, but the 2 pictures to the left. Vicksburg Park, south of Renville, is the best rock outcrop park of the whole country. It is probably the most fascinating rock outcrops of the whole country. In fact, I've got to brag about Renville County. Somebody in Renville County, under the Board of Commissioners in the past, bought all these little land spots along the river and turned them into parks. And whoever they were, they should be congratulated. They're all long gone. But what a legacy they left. The rocks that the Girl Scouts are standing on there and behind them are 3.5 billion years old. They are gneiss, G-N-E-I-S-S, and that means that they were once granite, and the heat and pressure of the mountain range on top of them caused them to become gneiss. Yeah, there were mountains all the way from south of Redwood area here, all the way down to the corner, probably almost to the Blue Mountain State Park, all the way to Duluth. So this mountain range ran right through here. And what happened to it? Erosion. It just destroyed them, washed them away. They disappeared, but left the roots for us to enjoy. And you know how these rocks got here? They were oozed up from below. And how were they exposed? What river came running down through the Minnesota River Valley and flushed the stuff out of there and exposed these rocks? What's the name of that river?
The River Warren.
River Warren. And where did River Warren come from?
Lake Agassiz.
Lake Agassiz up in the northwest. The glacier had piled up this big berm in front of it, and this big berm held the water back as the glacier kept melting back and made a lake, Lake Agassiz. But the lake got deep enough that all of a sudden it breached that dam of rock and sand that they'd piled up there, and it came rushing down. I would guess the valley of the Minnesota was carved in 100 to 150 years. It didn't take much longer than that. Fascinating place. The little red-haired girl, Charlie Brown's friend, is studying the black-eyed Susans in front of her. I took 2 times this summer, I took Girl Scouts to our county parks, and they worked on badges. They're working, the little red-headed girl is working on flower badge. That's a 4th grader. And then the 5th and 6th graders were working on a tree badge. We had them there in October. So the Friends of the Renville County Parks put these programs on for kids. The Minnesota Valley History Learning Center has scheduled me for a June day. I'm not sure. Let me give you a quick up on that. Well, don't have it written in this calendar. I think it's around the 11th or the 12th. I have 50 students coming in the full day. I'll take 25 in the morning and 25 in the afternoon. And we're just doing a scavenger hunt. And we'll be studying plants and animals of the valley and the rocks during that time. So I'm kind of thrilled about that.
That picture in the lower right, the Minnesota Valley History Learning Center has a summer program that is the recreation program for the city of Morton, the city of Franklin, the city of Morgan, the Lower Sioux community, and now this year, Gibbon, Fairfax, and Winthrop, and also the cities of Renville County. And I think this year we're going to have about 250 kids down there for 3 weeks, 4 days each week. Day camp. And they teach them, like people like John come in and teach them the geology, the history, river science, all that sort of thing.
This is more exposure to what's in our parks. This is Vicksburg Park again. All of these are Vicksburg Park. Notice the guy standing in the hole.
Yeah.
That guy is standing in a whirlpool hole. The river was so big and so rushing down through here, and it formed whirlpools. And if it gathered up some gravel and some rocks, it would swirl them in place. And they would actually grind themselves down into the underlying rocks. And so he's standing in one. Marv Boardwalk.
Okay.
You know him. And believe it or not, he's standing on a ledge. And below his feet, it turns. The whirlpool decided to find a softer spot, so it went to the side. You could actually crawl all the way up through it. Interesting. And that pothole down below is up on top of the scientific and natural area behind the Morton School on that hill, up behind the gas station. And that was carved by a whirlpool. But it didn't make a very deep impression, but it's full of water all the time there. And that's the kind of thing you can find by hiking up there on that scientific and natural area. The little girl on the right, she was studying trees in Vicksburg Park. I had to take that picture. She was sitting there in wonder at these trees. Just a sweet little girl. The top picture, a bunch of us were out hiking in May last year in Vicksburg. No, that's Vicksburg Park. It's kind of a neat little hike up through there. And as the guy got ahead of me up there, I decided I better take that picture. Okay. And that must be the last one. Any questions, comments, or snide remarks?
This is the Tatanka Bluffs website, and I don't, Julie or any board member want to make any comments about
I just put that on as a final slide. The website was developed in 2010, and we've got a lot of other things to talk about, but it's Tatankabluffs.com if you've not gone there. And as communities under events, you can post your community events there when you have no charge to use this site. You post it and I approve it, and then it automatically goes out there, and then we have a Facebook page that we share the information out to our friends in the neighborhood. So we need more communities using it, so if you could write that down, that would be great. And if you have questions, you just call me at the office. I oversee both of these, and maybe other people will learn.
And it can be as small as a church dinner or as big as a community-wide celebration. It is literally open to everyone and all organizations in the community.
And there's a page for all the communities with a link to your web pages too. So it's a great portal for our neighbors in the cities to find us and find out what's going on. In fact,
Questions?
today called from Sioux
Yeah.
Falls,
Mhm.
wanted to know what she could do this weekend.
Any questions or quick comments for the board as far as what you've just seen, as far as just kind of a quick description of the last several years of what the TBC board has been doing and all of the projects and programs that have come online as a part of that?
I would say the word we've used is our TBC group is an umbrella. That's all it is. And we have this umbrella above us, the TBC group, but we're all underneath it working. And that's kind of how we see the whole thing. It's just an umbrella group. They give enthusiasm, they give promotion, and they ask people to get involved. And
The
that's
board
what
is
they're
really only 8 people. It's 4 from Monroe County, 4 from Redwood County. So
Yeah.
we need once more.
That's a good segue into the next section of our conversation this evening. But before we get into that, we've had an additional person join us. Could you just quickly introduce yourself and where you're from?
I'm Janet Marty. I live a couple miles north of here. I'm married to Ted Suss.
Sure.
And I'm interested in the same things that he is.
All right.
Checking up on you.
now, you know.
I told you should call it that.
Well, you've heard us talk for a while, and now we want to listen to what you have to say. And so what we're going to do is, for this next section of our meeting, is to kind of split you up into some smaller discussion groups, conversation groups, and give you a chance to talk about 2 or 3 kind of broad questions. And those questions relate, and I've got kind of a little discussion guide handout that I'll provide. But here, just to kind of get you thinking a little bit, we want you to think about change. What does change mean for your community? You know, you've heard Lauren and the others talk about how these 2 counties have changed over the last 30, 40, 50 years. What kind of are some of those dimensions of change that we have all experienced as residents? Who's moving in? Who's moving out? How has the character of our community changed? What's happened to just the physical look of our 2 counties? How's that changed? What are some of the social and economic, political changes that have taken place over the last 10 years or so, 10, 15, 20 years? So, it's a broad question. Obviously, you could spend a lot of time talking about it, but we won't have a lot of time to talk about it, okay? But that's one question. The other side of that coin, though, is, again, and you've heard this in the conversation about the corridor as well. You have a lot of things going for you, a lot of community assets. What are some of those assets? What are some of those advantages that you have that can help to meet the challenge of change in Renville and Redwood counties? So what assets? if you are asking people to move here, to visit here, what do you have? Are you actually expecting visitors? I always thought this was kind of a neat sign because it says, we were expecting you. Welcome. Hope you have a great time. And hope that you have a great time so that you actually think about living here. And the third question, I'd like you to kind of mull around a little bit, is, so we have these challenges of change. We have some assets and advantages to deal with those changes, but how do we let people know? I want you to think about your community, however you think about your community, as kind of a blank billboard. What would you put on that billboard to let people know? We've got some really cool things here in Lucan. We've got some neat things in Wabasso. How would you fill this billboard? What would you say to me as an outsider? Ken, we want you to come. Why should I? What do you got here? How are you going to attract me? I'm retired. I can go anywhere. You know? So what do you have that would attract me? You already have attracted me because I have an affinity for Southwest Minnesota. So what would attract me to stay longer out here? So that's a question. And then other things that come up in your discussion. So just a couple of things. We've got some people that are representing, more than one person representing a community, so I'd like to split you up a little bit so that we don't have more than one person in a group that's from the same community. And then the commissioners, I'd like to get you split up so that you're not all in one group, and the TBC board members. So that you're not all in one group. So I'd like to just suggest 3 smaller groups. We can have one group in the back, perhaps one group here, and we can use this adjacent room here as well. So we could get at least one group in there, maybe 2 if you don't yell at each other too much. So just for the sake of simplicity, let's count off into 3 groups. Starting here, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And Dick is 1. Okay, let's have those in group 1 in the back. Those in group 2, perhaps up here, just bring a chair. And those in group 3, you get the big room.
Spread out.
You've got lots of space in the room. And I would like I'm going to ask a TBC board member to be a recorder for your conversation so that we have that. And I'm going to give you about 45 minutes for your groups.
Right on the eye, right?
So group 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, you go ahead.
Okay, I'm here.
I'm going to short distance. You were
Wait.
or June. She ran away.
Hey, all ladies? How exciting is that?
Okay. That's true.
Is he the only man representing?
Ted was here.
And Ted, could I ask you to just jot down some notes?
He thought about it.
Got that? Okay.
That's fine.
Would you prefer to be in a different group You know,
I missed the first part. So
okay, and Dick,
It's just history.
could I ask you to perhaps just take some notes?
Do you want?
Don't worry about it.
All right.
Oh,
So in
But
your,
we aren't using that thing.
with these
I'm just
questions,
gonna take notes on the paper.
there are some things that you can talk about. Like, how do we define our community? You know, how are we thinking about it? What are some of those changes?
First question is, how has our community changed in the past 10 years?
Changed in the past 10 years. And
I don't know, we have to live on to 10.
Geography and social culture. So
it's
changed in the
not
past 10 years.
Well, you have more history than I have.
Well, I know, but I mean, that was 30 years ago.
Why was he gone?
It's permanent.
Why did I leave?
I would say
Yeah,
ours
that's
has
where we're at. Why are some leaving?
I graduated high school, I went to college, and I took a job.
Okay, so why are you back?
Generally in our town.
I came back for family.
Very good.
I say lots of the storefronts. I mean,
Any other thoughts
seen
on
that?
changes in your community the past 10 years?
Well, the past 10 years, I was just thinking, I don't think it's changed that much. 10 years.
You okay in population?
Yeah, like 16,000, I mean,
Has that changed?
What's the average age today versus 10 years ago?
Yeah,
You think?
or, you know, how
well,
many
I know that
schools
they've
taxes
been
changed
Winchester,
according
who
to
I think
voted on or
said,
policies and
I mean, because we look at Redwood County
Is there
and
an erosion in
we
the
told between 35 and 50,
pretty
everyone's
healthy, still have the
that
same
are
amount,
higher than
kind of
the
roughly the
average.
same income to
Yes.
support
Graduates.
you know, the county
Yeah.
services.
And they should go out and explore.
Pretty
it.
stable in terms of,
But-
you know, I know like, well,
The
Bassam used to
middle
have cop
population has come back.
do it all the time, and that
Yeah.
got too
Well,
expensive.
that's the
I
point,
don't know if
but
that had
they
anything to do
need-
with taxes,
because
but
they
they
couldn't find
wanted
a
to
job
just,
or because they didn't get
The thing is,
Yeah, they need to go out and get their.
I think
education
to
and-
answer your question, the
But I
tax
think that's
base
true
is
when you
structured,
look at the
split
number
three
of
ways,
graduates.
residential,
that are in
commercial, and
Redwood.
agriculture.
There's
So in the
200
last 10
probably
years,
between.
more of the
The
burden is
families
being placed
aren't
on
big.
agriculture.
No, but
And
there's
that's
only
because of
200, but what I'm
balance
saying,
of
for
plant. So
skewed.
when you
Lower-
move,
got
yeah,
the
it
rules.
shifts. It
That says
constantly
The 25
does
that are
it
supposed to
get
graduate this year from
adjusted
school,
so that
that'll live
basic
within
things
10
get
miles
maintained,
of the
like road
rest.
repair and
That
then.
Yeah, that's how
25,
your levy is
that's-
established.
because they-
So the city
they
sets a
hold.
levy,
There's a higher
the township
percentage
sets a
leaving
levy,
of
the
non-natives.
schools set a levy, and the county sets a levy.
What,
Support
discuss
of
that for us non-informed
services.
people. What percentage of total population is represented by?
So the shift of
I
tax
would
base
say
has
the worst
constantly
situation, correct me,
is
Alan, you probably have a better figure than I am,
And,
but there's
number
about
of businesses that
25
there are. I
per
mean,
grade.
you guys invest
or-
probably in less businesses, so you have.
Yeah, and there's class of 80 or
probably
90,
less
okay.
homes, but
So
you have more
it's
opportunities
getting
for
higher and
people to
higher.
have agriculture.
So that's the one population segment
The
that
boom
is
is-
growing in this area.
Oh, yeah, growing and staying home.
Stable.
Staying here.
Yeah.
And they have economic
There's money in there.
satisfaction, they are taken care of financially.
More discretionary money than
I'll,
has ever been in history
I'll defer to Al.
because of our-
There's profit sharing from the casino, so it locks them into a 10-mile radius.
You know
Average
what the nature
per
of that
capita is
profit sharing is, what
270.
kind of levels are we talking about? Per family or per individual?
40,000-50,000. Yeah.
What does that mean?
So, but they go to college, but they have to live within 10 miles of radius,
That's
or
the
you
average
lose
based on
it,
the
like
big-
Lauren
Yeah,
said.
It's
you
inflated
either
because they-
in college or you're within that 10-mile radius if you want to be a participant in the monthly.
Do it, 270,000.
Which skews it
But it's,
quite a
again,
bit, because other,
agricultural.
the white people, the non-Indian,
Even
don't.
it's-
There's a some social dissensions between, quote unquote,
Johnny
between
Craft
the Indian nation and non-Indian nation.
increased.
No, the kids,
No.
Okay, that's good to hear.
no. Where I sit,
Now than they
the
had
landscape
Do they even have that?
is,
Oh, yeah.
you know, the Millwright school was closed, Bellevue school was
But
closed,
like
the
Corey
Daniel
Johnson
school was
mentioned,
closed. You know, we've shrunk the school district, so what's changed is,
You just will have that
is
expansion, and I think that's what it is at. So,
1978 was the big battle, or 77,
The things that
between
I
the
see
Morton
as a
Redwood
change
girls
that maybe
basketball
affect
team.
all of us.
And
we
those
don't
Friday
think
night
about it
light
are-
rivalries,
I mean, how
sports
many
and all
more
that
private
are
schools,
fading,
Ted, you probably know better than I do.
becoming distant memories.
How many more
And-
private schools are
And
there
it's
now?
more now part of,
in the
well, they're,
communities?
community college.
They're
there.
alumni. Al's
What is, does Bethesda
he's
have
an
a
alumnus
brother in
of,
school?
actually, with graduated.
Yeah,
Oh,
St.
even more,
John's is
okay.
new.
So he's really alumnus of
There's
our
a lot
consolidated school.
more kids
Went to a
going
different building
to
of a
private
different campus.
schools, charter
And
schools,
so
so the
it's changing
educational
that way, the way we
transition
think.
is
A lot
different.
more
I think
in
that's
the
a big
last 10
change. We
years
also have a
than we
more
realized.
increased
I
religious,
think
a
even
different
I
religious
look
group
at
than we've
the
ever had
county
before.
and
I don't know if
other
anybody
than
ever.
public health, which is partnership
Yeah,
for 30 years.
I don't know what the increase in
It's huge that the
Louise'
county
brother, for lack of a
is
better word,
partnering